to stop supporting fast fashion. Described by Bick and Rachel in The Global Environmental Injustice of Fast Fashion, fast fashion is a term used to describe the readily available, inexpensively made fashion of today. This consumer-driven industry thrives by child labor and environmentally toxic practices to create cheap clothes for ready shoppers. The fast fashion industry takes advantage of children by paying them insufficiently and forcing them to endure harsh conditions. These children are incorporated into the productive activity as workers because of the poverty of the households to which they belong, as stated by Phillips and Nicola in The Social Foundations of Global Production Networks towards a global political economy of child labor. Thankfully, there are other stores that you can shop at so that you don't have to support these places. But first, we do need to address the awful conditions that these children are subjected to. Many children around the world have to work to support their families. Towards an Ethical Fashion Framework by Hugh Anders and Jacob Bush quotes, "While in principle they have the choice of refusing to work under unethical conditions, since their livelihood likely depends on their jobs, this is not a free choice. Their families are too poor for them to have the choice to not work. These children need to work in order to be able to live. They are packed together and forced to work long hours just to survive. To top it off, they are not even paid enough to support themselves on their own. Children are also forced to endure hazardous pollution. Our planet is dying, yet factories continue to emit toxic fumes into the air without a second thought. The current garment industry is the second worst offender of the environment, next to the oil industry, according to Sato and Yuriko in Consumer Aesthetics and Environmental Ethics, Problems and Possibilities. There are other places to buy clothes that do not do this to our environment. However, the atrocities that these factories commit must be brought to light. The hazardous working conditions that attracted regulatory attention in the United States and the European Union have not been eliminated, but merely shifted overseas, as stated in The Global Environmental Injustice of Fast Fashion, Environmental Health, a Global Access Science source by Bick and Rachel. We can't just assume that these laws are going to take care of everything, because they're not, because these people aren't subjected to them. They're above these laws. The same article states that increased consumption patterns have created millions of tons of textile waste in landfills and unregulated settings. The waste builds up, harming our environment. John and Anama explain the situation in Fast Fashion Sustainability and Ethical Appeal of Luxury Brands, saying that fast fashion and low-costing clothing collections based on current high-cost luxury fashion trends is, by its very nature, a fast response system that encourages disposability. Clothes are getting pushed out of factories to satisfy the consumer's demand. And once the trend changes, these consumers now just don't need those clothes anymore, and so they throw them away. And these thrown away clothes get dumped into landfills, creating a very toxic environment. Another problem highlighted by Bick and Rachel in Environmental Health, a Global Access Science source, is that textile dyeing results in additional hazards as untreated wastewater from dyes are often discharged into local water systems, releasing heavy metals and other toxicants that can adversely impact the health of animals in addition to nearby residents. This carelessness is a product of them trying to make clothes quickly for profit and disregarding the well-being of our planet. Those making clothes don't really have to worry about the pollution because those making the clothes are quite rich. So they're the ones living far away from the pollution. They don't have to see it, but the poor, whom they are subjecting to the toxic environments which they are forced to work in, also have to deal with the pollution that the factories are pumping out. So, the same article by Bick and Rachel says, occupational and safety hazards in these LMICs are often not enforced due to poor political infrastructure and organizational management. The result is a myriad of occupational hazards, including respiratory hazards due to poor ventilation, such as cotton dust and synthetic air particles, and musculoskeletal hazards from repetitive motion tasks. We can see those in charge don't care at all for the well-being of their workers or the impoverished and they don't care for the planet. They force them to work in these hazardous conditions and pollute their homes and water. Someday we could be healthy and children wouldn't be subjected to such terrible conditions. Our world might be alive and safe because you decided to stop supporting fast fashion. Our world also might suffocate from pollution, and children might continue to suffer if you do not attempt to stop. I understand it's hard. I know there's a lot of things you don't want to get secondhand, or maybe you just don't have the money, but secondhand, you could go to thrift stores and they're all very cheap, and so you can get lots of clothing there. But if you don't want to get some stuff secondhand, there are also, you can look up ethical stores online and you can buy that stuff there, which is a little more expensive, but you can buy it knowing you have a clear conscience. So please stop supporting the fast fashion industry and stop shopping sustainably. This fast fashion industry is heavily buyer-driven, so you can make a major impact. If enough people stop, then we can force them to reform. A change in the world is needed to keep children safe and to keep our Earth from dying.